All right, next topic is warm and dry climates specifically. And this, I mean warm and dry climates, of course, outside the greenhouse, but that also naturally means that in the greenhouse you also have to deal with a much more warm and dry climate. I'd like to dive into some specific challenges that you guys face in these conditions, and that can be around the world, that can be a lot of different crops, but I'm just interested to hear about your challenges in the field, your experiences. Can I start off with you, Lisa?
Yes, of course. If I think of a warm and dry climate, then the first thing that pops into my mind is the spider mite. That's a pest that really likes it dry and warm. They like to be then in the head of the plant where it's warm and dry. And
I just got attacked by a bumblebee, but no damage.
And I also talked about this in the short video we recently published about this.
Right, yeah.
And in that case you need to be careful to find the first spider mite. Often there are certain spots in the greenhouse that are more susceptible for spider mite because there it's warmer, there's more airflow, for example. And it's all about being on time with your natural enemies, because the natural enemies do like it more humid. So to prevent this mismatch, you need to be there with the predatory mites, for example the phytocyas, when the first spider mite is occurring.
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's all about balance again. If you have not too much light, or you can adjust the light by screens or by coatings, then you can really realize a better climate in the head of the plant. The head of the plant is the head of the plant, and if you can create a good atmosphere, then the good phytocylas have more time to catch the spiders, or spiders are coming less quick inside the greenhouse. We see that in all kinds of things, that here we have different climates in the Netherlands than we have in Mexico. It's drier, it's hotter, radiation is higher. So all things need to be taken into account.
Pests will go faster.
You also have to consider the air volume in the greenhouse. Like what is the transpiration surface, like leaf areas of 3 to 5. Looking at the total volume of the greenhouse. And indeed the energy load coming from outside to inside, and sometimes then you need the coating, or quite often you need a coating to balance that the plant actually can keep up transpiration, can keep up humidity. And also what we see, like from climate control of perspective, that we also can be of assistance by sometimes limiting the venting capacity, because once you've lost the humidity you cannot retrieve it back. Sometimes it's good to rather keep the humidity a little bit in.
But how do you close your vents when it's really high radiation and high temperature? What do you need to do to close your vents then a little bit more?
Well, that's again finding the balance. If you close the vents and there would be no transpiration, temperature would explode. While if you squeeze the vents, so not fully close it, actually the time that the humidity will keep in the air, it will still take the energy from the air, and you actually could only need 50% of the venting capacity if you really make sure that all the humidity is absorbing the energy that it's getting from the greenhouse and the solar energy. So you can do with less venting, keeping better humidity, helping then the predators. In some cases, if you do not have sufficient transpiration area, then a misting installation could become an interesting investment.
I see a lot of problems that people use a really thick layer of say chalk in southern countries, and then they have no light but they have a high temperature.
That's the easiest way, but then you're not focusing on more photosynthesis.
But no, that's the thing.
And that's normally the starting point. Can I make more sugars?
Yes.
Because then I could potentially harvest more, and limiting light is limiting photosynthesis.
So we see that lowering the leaf temperatures by the use, so the approach can be different when it comes to change the light, in my case via coatings. So if you change the way you do normal, like use a chalk-based coating, but you use, for instance, an infrared reflection coating, you see that the leaf temperature is lower, that you have more light for your photosynthesis, and that your plant is more active on moments that it was not, because in the past there was no light. So the plant stopped because you cannot work without light if you have a high temperature. You only
but also the humidity levels need to be
Yes.
good to control the pest.
yeah.
But I think that there's no one size fits all, because if you
No,
would have
of
like a float glass greenhouse in the Netherlands or a double poly
Yes.
diffused
It's everywhere
plastic,
Yeah.
you need different kind of coating
approaches.
approaches.
Approaches, yes. But we see that if a plant is more active, it's more resilient. That the beneficial insects have more time to catch the bad ones.
Yeah.
So it's there are a lot of things change. You are able to steer yourself more and more better.
Yeah. So the solution to warm and again hot and dry climates is to have a not as hot, more humid climate. Try to do that by squeezing windows, misting system. I think I've heard you talk about spraying the plants even.
Yeah, to get it more humid. And another thing I want to add to René's story about the ventilators, to not put them fully up to speed, because that can also have a disadvantage for your spider mite control, because the spider mite don't have wings. So they spread by airflow. They make a kind of small parachutes. So as soon as you put the ventilators on, too much or full speed, or I always find the first spider mite or the spread of the spider mite in the rows with the ventilators. So they help the spider mite disperse to your greenhouse.
There's more turbulence. There's like a throw of air, and that's where we see more moderate airflow is key now, and in all kinds of approaches, also to be more energy efficient, but also indeed having less spread of the pest, but more like a better humidity spread. Humidity will build up gradually in a high wire crop, but to get it a little bit more even, some air movement is desired, but
not too much, but
close to the ventilator, it could be too much indeed.
I found in the past, I found this week I found out that I'm already working for 40 years in the greenhouse industry. 40. And the thing is that in the past we started with wooden measuring boxes. And we used knijpers, what do you say that, for attaching your plastic to the side walls. And the funny thing is that spiders really like wood. So where the wooden measuring box was, spiders. When they have clippers on the plastic, bam, spider mites. So at that time you really learned that these were the hotspots to look for. And nowadays it's the pump on the side of the side walls where the air is dry and the things like that. But it's already, so it was already really quick that we found out in the past, not so long ago, that it was wooden was really one of the first places for spiders.
That's also why the design of the sensors is now different materials, more insulating, also white, just to make sure that indeed it doesn't attract.
Correct.
And at the same time you get a better reading.
And if a spider is flying, it will be sucked by the ventilator of this measuring box.
It will be shredded by the fan.
Okay. So we've covered trying to make the climate more favorable for the plants as well as for the predatory mites. But I can imagine that still you still deal with high temperatures, and I can imagine a lot of pests in these types of conditions just explode. So with higher temperatures, of course, repopulation also goes faster. What are some tips that you can give growers when you know that temperatures are going to increase, light levels are going to increase?
To put the beneficials already preventatively. You know they're coming, and when they are there, they will develop fast. So curatively, it's always harder to control the pests. So please start on time and start already preventatively with some parasitoids or gall midges against the aphids. They can always search better for pests than people can do, because the natural enemies smell the aphids or the spider mites. They know where to go to. They are actually the best scouts you can have.
And how much is enough? I can imagine that being different for different circumstances, different crops. But is there any kind of balance? We've talked about balance a couple of times. Is there any balance that a grower should always aim for in terms of?
There's the least number of insects you should introduce defined by how far they can fly. If you don't have enough release points, for example, for a gull midge flies further compared with a parasitoid like Aphidius colemani. So we say, we know for sure that a colemani, that's a parasitoid against aphids, they fly at least 10 meters one way, 10 meters the other way. So every 20 meters you should make a release point to cover your whole greenhouse. I think that's the most important. And then you should calculate how much you want to introduce, but often it already starts at 1 per square meter.
Some beneficiaries you can also just add at the beginning, like degenerans. Do you still have degenerans,
No.
the Amblyseius? No? So we had a really small, tiny black dot Amblyseius, and we added just on the first plants of the pot. And then the people, they took it with them throughout the greenhouse because it was attached on your arms, and then it was from plant to plant. So in several weeks, you only added at the beginning, and you saw the black dots all over the greenhouse because of just
Automatic dispensing of humans.
ourselves. So you don't, so like viruses we take with us, but we also take the good and the bad ones with us ourselves. It's
if I
always,
look at the pepper crop, for example, our advice is to start already with preferably sachets with Swierski or Monderensis against whitefly.
There's
and
little
thrips.
bags that also have got some food in them. Right?
Yeah, they have some food in it, so you have already small rearings, and you hang them in the plant as soon as you get the first flowers, because then you have pollen, and they can also survive on the pollen. So if you start by then, you will, that rearing will continue on your crop, and especially if all plants are touching each other. Also, depending on the system, some growers have, as we call it, a V system, so they have one mat and then one slab and multiple stems, and then they touch each other earlier compared with a traditional system, as we see here, with double slabs. But as soon as the plants touch each other, they can just walk over and spread throughout your greenhouse. But also there we advise the least number you should have is a sachet every 4 or 5 plants, but also depending on the system.
pollination. You mentioned pollination. That is something which is really influenced also by the climate inside the greenhouse. High temperatures, low humidity.
You know we're talking about them.
So, what is influencing the right quality of the pollen inside flowers? It is a topic I will record soon with your colleague Remco a part about that. But so why fly bumblebees not on certain moments during the day, and then they say, yes, they need to cool the hive, but how can you create an optimum flower with the right quality of pollen is also something you as a grower have influence on. It's not only the temperature, it's not only the humidity, but it's all things together to create an optimum climate in the head of the plant. Already 1 week before the flower starts, is a flower created, is the pollen already started to create, and then that influence your food set on a later stage.
And this has to do with the rise and the fall. Like you have to rise towards daytime. If you go too quick, humidity can be sort of too high in the crop, or even condense on fruits and potentially flowers. But also in the end of the day, when you drop temperature, the plant is still pumping water also to the flowers. If you cool down too quickly, the plant sort of starts saying, hey, I don't need any water, but the roots are still warm and pushing. You get a sort of microvegetation, which also will worsen the flower quality.
So in the past, I always received phone calls, my bees are not flying, I need more hives. And I always said, it's not the bees, it is the climate. And now during plant empowerment time, we see more and more that you as a grower has more ability to change the flower quality inside your greenhouse. And it's a really nice journey to learn more how we can deal with that. Yeah.
Okay. Guys, before we close this topic off, hot and dry conditions, are there any topics that we didn't discuss or any challenges that you want to bring up to discuss?
Yeah, we didn't talk about the insect netting in the windows. And because I hear from a lot of growers that they are afraid of not controlling their climate well and not having enough air once the netting is there. But there are some pests we cannot control as soon as they fly in. For example, sting bugs, it's very hard to find good natural enemies to fully control them, because also the threshold is very low. They prefer to sting in your fruits, and therefore you cannot accept any of them. Well, we don't have insects that kill all of them immediately as soon as they come in. So we always talk about this balance, but then growers tell me, I don't want this balance, I don't want this in none. And then I say, then there's only one option, and that's the insect netting.
That's the way to go, definitely for the European growers, because there's a high density of greenhouses, and indeed your neighbor could be actually bringing everything to you. Now you have the so-called nets, you have the cassettes, like the lined across the fence. But you really see growers adapting quickly, but also being happily surprised, because it looks like an obstruction, but it also can be helpful in sort of balancing the humidity more, because it will trap a little bit, indeed, so there's less air exchange, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an issue, because if humidity will build up, the enthalpy of the greenhouse can be built up, and you could actually remove the same quantity of energy and humidity by having less venting capacity. The thing to look for at the very beginning, that's also a learning curve for growers, is that the first openings, they will definitely be different, because if you open a vent and it would directly have exchange, or you have insect netting or a cassette in there, we open quicker further just to have the airflux, because the first part, still there's a lot of material obstructing everything. So we open quicker to larger positions, especially for humidity control,
so
and the first opening in the morning.
Yeah, so you have to kind of learn working with it, and then...
Yeah, well, with a good climate control, it's a quite quick learning curve.
I receive a lot of questions to cool down, you need to change the way you use your movable screens and your coatings, because you have less ventilation. So it's easily getting warmer. So together with Svensson, we have a lot of questions about how can we optimize the climate inside when you use cassettes, because the airflow is less. So you need to change and adjust. But that's a good thing, because we learn a lot about that. To see how can we get the balance back and continue the balance, and we want to have a higher humidity inside and CO2. So, and that's more able to do, but then you need to adjust other things you didn't do in the past or did do different.
I think it's more looking to infrared radiation, like what brings the energy, and at the same time elevate the quality of the light. The gradient, so that it's not direct light but more spread.
So it's a really nice journey, which we talk about a lot, because people not always all the information by hand, how you can control leaf temperature, light, which light, how much, but you can really easily control. The only thing is you need to invest in light, and now often you invest in slabs, in air things like Fox installations, but you also can have a better look which movable screen combined with which coating can work for a case with cassettes, and then you see that you can control it all in a different way. And that's not only for the Netherlands, we see it everywhere. We see it also in Morocco, in Spain, Italy, China, Mexico, everywhere as people are adjusting, because we also have global warming. So
let's close this topic off with I think also what we started off with, which is the pest behavior of spider mites you mentioned. I was thinking, if a grower is dealing with much more hot and dry conditions and the sun is also coming up, are there also behaviors of other pests with other pests than spider mites that you know are going to change their behavior in a crop. So you should look for them elsewhere, or their behavior changes in a way that the predatory mites have a lot more difficulty getting them under control.
Yeah, for sure. If you have more spider mites, they will start making this webbing, and as soon as a part of the plant consists of this webbing, it's harder for the predatory mites to get through and to get to the spider mite. But that's also why you should start in time. But also, a stressed plant changes the behavior of pests. For example, there's a lot of research done of aphids on stressed plants. So aphids can make wings, and before we always thought it's about the density of the population. As soon as they think, oh, it's too crowded for me to reproduce over here, I just go to some place more quiet or more nicer plant, or to have more food. And but a lot of research is done of stressed plants, which can also be the reason for the aphids to make wings, because they think, okay, this is not a good plant to reproduce. My babies will not survive on this plant. I have to go to a less stressed plant, and then they make the wings and they spread faster in your greenhouse.
So the aphid thinks, I could put my eggs on there, but there is a chance that by the
will
time
not
the eggs
survive.
come out, by the time the eggs hatch, there will not be any food left for the plants, for the aphids.
Yeah.
To get some indicators of stress, because trials are on heavily stressed, but you sometimes have heavily stress in the crop, but you don't see it. And that's where a thermographical camera really can be helpful. That if you look with a thermographical camera and you see the head of the plant like several degrees higher, and also the flowers can be, because they transpire less, they also elevate themselves in temperature compared to a little lower in the crop. And there you really can see also, and probably that also delivers sort of the signals to the insects like, hey, I'm having really a trouble moment here on the top of the canopy, and you can signal that with thermographical camera. Yeah.
I always learned something really easy in the past. So I learned that if you walk through your greenhouse and you just do this, that the temperature of the leaf always needs to be lower than your fingers, because your fingers have a temperature of 30, and if it's the same or warmer, so that you feel a warm thing between your fingers, then your plant's into stress. But if you feel it, like I do now, it's really cold, so then you know that your plants are, so your fingers, actually yourself, is the easiest way to just control what is the condition of my plants, a first checkup. And if you have doubts, then sensors or photo cameras, everything come out. But this is the most easiest way.
Everybody can do it without tools, but you also see like a lot of growers working with a sort of a weapon, which is their point and shoot.
I have them in my bag as well. So I always
standard equipment to any grower. I have to say.
So this is the easiest you have always with you, and you can buy and use other. But then it's more data driven.
It's more fact based, and you can sort of record things, compare things.
Okay, guys, I think we've covered this topic then.
Yeah.
Thank you
very much.
You too.